This is a new day full of light and sound and expectation. This day has been waiting for you. This day has been waiting especially for you, to embrace you, to guide you. This day has been waiting with open arms, just for you. This is the day we have been given. Let's not waste it. Come now and let us worship together. Please rise and bow to your spirit for our first hymn, 53 in the gray hymnal, 53. You guys are all an hour late too. It's really good to see you all. Just really, really glad to be here. A couple announcements this morning. If you haven't seen the back of your order of service, we're doing in person what they're called circle suppers. It's basically an opportunity to meet at someone's house, and everyone who's invited brings a potluck dish. So one person provides the space, everyone else provides the dishes. It's just an opportunity, especially in the cooler months, for us to get to know each other a little bit better. On November 11th, which is this coming Saturday, there will be a virtual reading of the Scottish play, Macbeth. We're not in a theater, so I feel okay saying that. This is going to include actors from all over the country, from Oregon to Youngstown, Ohio. It's free and available for everyone, 8 p.m. this coming Saturday. It's virtual only, so you can just come in on Zoom and listen to it. I think it's going to be really interesting. And there will be a talk back after about the themes of the play, which I think will be cool too. And now I would love to invite Ryan to kick off our pledge drive this year.
Thank you, Reverend Joseph. Hello, friends and neighbors. I can't believe it's November already, especially the time change last night, which I did not set any of my clocks for, so I got up extra early today. But anyways, time does really fly by, friends. The British poet Andrew Marvell coined that metaphor about time flying in his famous poem to his coy mistress. And the lines specifically are, "At my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near." And I think that's always been a powerful and evocative metaphor for me. You picture like a chariot bearing down on you with 4 or 6 horses churning their thundering hooves. And you know that the weight and power of that, it feels like we better run. And time feels pretty fleeting to us too. But in the scope of this church, in this building, in this congregation, time's moved at a different, although no less than enviable rate. When I first wandered in these doors with my kids 7, 8 years ago, I wasn't looking for any additional stuff in my life or certainly not to inherit some type of legacy. I felt alienated at my job, and I was hurting from a recent divorce and overwhelmed by being a single father to 2 preteen girls, and I needed help, and I needed solace. And you beautiful people, you delivered. You know, man, you really did. And as I saw people actively trying to fulfill the pledges in their covenant, I wanted to join them, and so I did. But I didn't realize at the time that I was stepping into a legacy, a culture, a long-standing tradition of acceptance and service in this community. Because in addition to helping one another and seeking truth in the spirit of love and living in peace, we're also caretakers of a legacy, of the sacred space we attempt to create within this building and online, of a beautiful building that's 100 years old and has sat alight, a beacon of welcome and tolerance on the shores of Wick Park for a century. And as caretakers of it and keepers of the chalice flame, we have an obligation and a duty to make sure it continues for another 100 years. And that brings us back to reality. And the reality is that we live in a capitalist society, and it takes money to preserve this space, both physically and spiritually. I mean, all of us together essentially are in the midst of an experiment of running a nonprofit. We have a building to maintain. We have employees to pay. We have, utilities, etc. And we attempt to do this together by employing strategies similar to other nonprofits. We do a version of a pledge drive, like NPR, if you will. We solicit funds for our members to run this organization. And I personally think we do an excellent job of being stewards of our mutual purse. We keep the building going, the lights and heat on, employ 3 people directly, pay musicians, donate funds and time into our community, and produce quite a nice little slate of programs, services, and experiences for our community, as well as for our membership. And that's all for about $150,000 a year, which sounds like a lot, but I think that's below the operating budget of many organizations our size that have buildings, etc. I was born and raised in Columbiana, about 20 miles south of here. My dad's a Pentecostal minister. I was homeschooled until the 7th grade, and then I attended Christian school until graduation, and all I wanted was to get the heck out of here and go somewhere else, anywhere else besides Youngstown, Ohio. And I did. I moved away when I was 18 to go to college, and I lived in other states. I fought forest fires out west with the AmeriCorps for years and stayed out there and went to graduate school and loved living in the mountains, etc. And then I moved back here. After 18 years away, I moved back. And I really thought I would hate it, to be honest. I moved back because of my kids and family circumstances and benefits to them. But I was wrong. I love it here in Ohio. I'm really glad I moved back. There are many reasons, but among them are the spirit and the values of this valley. We struggle through hardship. We're determined and we're gritty and funny and helpful. We're generous with our spirit and we carry our own weight. I think Midwesterners generally seem better with money than lots of other places I've lived. We've had to be good with money, traditionally, for decades, for centuries. And I know many people in this valley don't like to rely on charity from others. They want to pull their own weight, to carry their load, pay their dues, whatever metaphor we use. We don't have dues to belong here, friends. We don't have a creed that you have to ascribe to or a loyalty oath that you need to swear. But again, we do have a legacy to maintain and a community of our own making to provide for. My dad's church preached the tithe. If you're not familiar with that, that's the doctrine that essentially the Bible commands, or maybe at least incentivizes, that one give 10% of their funds to the temple, the church, and that if you do that, kind of prosperity follows. They literally call this the prosperity gospel. I'm very thankful that we do not encourage this way of thinking at this church. But, we have to figure out a way to kind of move forward together in keeping the building open and, employing and maintaining, again, these different benefits I've already outlined. If we broke down our goal by membership, if we literally took our costs and we divided them up amongst the people who had signed the membership book, it cost each member about $102 a month to meet our goals, not including the UU national dues. That's a whole different thing, and that's annual. Myself, Jack, I see is here today. I know Brandy couldn't join us today, but the three of us are kind of working together to coordinate this year's pledge drive that we do annually in the month of November to, again, try to meet and establish some sort of budget for the church so that the board can move forward the next year and understand what we have, at least what people have committed towards. Brady, Jack, and I, no one's talking about assigning dues or, hey, here's how much people owe. But I wanted to see what the person breakdown would be. And we historically talk about having a $150,000 goal for this fundraising. What would that look like if we split it up amongst each individual? I like to think about big numbers and small chunks to get a better sense of what it means in terms of my portion. And whether we think about our budgetary needs of $150,000 a year or $102 a person a month, that's what we're looking at in terms of needing to raise. So, what can we do here? Obviously, your one-time donations or the contributions you place in the plate that are marked for this for UU, and the pledge gifts to the church are what we use to run this place. You're also generous with your time and your money, your light and your love. We can't ask for more from all you beautiful people. But I think we could all think and meditate and pray, whatever we're into, if we could afford to give to the church, and of course what that might look like, if we could afford to give to our community, because that's essentially what this is, something that we've created ourselves. We could, if we could afford that, we could consider donating that. We could ponder the possibility of maybe giving a little bit more than that to be able to cover other members that might not be able to afford $100 a month. I mean, certainly not all of us can do that, and that's totally understood. We could do other things as well, though, that might not involve directly giving funds. We could invite our friends and family and members to join us here in our community. If we have more people who attend this welcoming space on Sundays, certainly the costs to preserve our sacred space here get distributed amongst more people, and that's just a little bit less for all. And it's not like if there's 50 more people that join us in these pews each Sunday, it's going to raise our costs considerably. Our costs are kind of our costs, regardless if there's 20 people in the room or 200. So certainly we could just encourage people. We're not an evangelical religion or here to save souls, but we do have a cool community to offer our friends and neighbors. I know because I've been a benefit of what you guys have to offer, and it's really blessed my life and my children's lives. And making that a little more known in our community, I think that's just trying to help people find their space here in the Valley. And then ultimately, I guess you could donate your time if you couldn't donate funds. We haven't reached our fundraising goals, unfortunately, for quite a few years in a row now. And so we need to develop contingency plans together as a group in case we're unable to meet our goals ourselves. I think we're going to be discussing a larger spring fundraising activity in which we can include the entire community in to try to find some other avenue of funds outside just the people in this room. And you could definitely pitch in with those efforts, like when we do rummage sales, etc. It does take just some good old-fashioned elbow grease and some people here to make the payments and help people walk things to their car. And if you can't donate your funding, you could certainly donate your time. It is a blessing. Ultimately, we're sorry to have to ask you for money. I blame our society, friends. I blame our society. But there are lots of ways you can help or get involved. You can consider filling out a pledge card. I'll be downstairs. Jack will be downstairs after the service, and we have some pledge cards. If you'd like to talk to us about it, we can help discuss what you've pledged in the past if you don't recall, etc. We'd help you fill out a pledge card for the first time. And honestly, any little bit helps. It's just so amazing how many people give even just the smallest amounts, but still give as part of maintaining this space. Thank you so much. 2, you could consider if you're able to donate more to cover another member financially. Sometimes we feel like we're contributing, a fair amount, but then we look at what the operating costs are, or we realize, well, there's other people that couldn't necessarily pitch in, and maybe that's just a blessing we kind of give to our community by paying a little bit more than our share to help others. We can invite people to join us in the hopes they could find community and covenant with us, and then also have more shoulders upon which to carry our burden. I do think we offer a really cool space in our community, and I think people would attend and appreciate if they knew more about it. And then, of course, you could donate your time to our fundraisers. Ultimately, thank you all for listening. I'll stop with the NPR, get out, rally the vote speech, but you should vote on Tuesday, by the way. Definitely. Regardless of how, you should definitely be there. But thank you, folks.
Good morning. It's that time of the year again. Yes, pledge time. Yes, election day. But also, it's fall. Predictably, the skies are grayer, the clouds heavier, temperatures cooler, days shorter, nights longer. Hello, darkness, my old friend, but did you have to come at 5 o'clock again? It all seems too soon. But really, it's right on time. As planned, year after year, even if we don't like it, there's some not so small comfort in the predictability of it all. The seasonal cycles, the ongoing tension of light versus dark. Partially because of UUYO's solar holiday celebrations, I've come to look forward to the winter solstice. Summer solstice is great and all, summertime, picnics, all that fun stuff. But there's something really special about the winter solstice. To create our own warmth and sound and light out of the cold, quiet darkness is a kind of magic that can only happen this time of the year. The other reason why I have a bit of an internal countdown clock focused on the longest night of the year is because I've made a bit of a tradition of my own. I call it winter hibernation, which is a blend of hibernation and vacation. As someone who rejoices and reveres nature, I think we have a lot to learn from her and the cadence that she has set for living things. Everything else slows down and tucks in for the winter. Why should we be any different? Since I've been working, just before the winter holidays, I've crafted my own little winter ritual where I take time off of work to intentionally slow down, snuggle up, and most importantly, chill out. The most satisfying thing is clearing my calendar and putting up my out of the office message for close to 2 whole glorious weeks. That's really all I want for Christmas these days, the gift of time and slowing down, which is harder to find and has a higher price than whatever the must-have toy or technology is of the year, even with all the supply chain issues and inflation. But as much as I have come to love the mystery and magic of winter and the joys of hibernation, there is still a persistent tension between these forces of light and dark, and finding myself more inside than outside. This tension of this seasonal transition means more time on the couch rather than my real happy place, which is the saddle of my bicycle. The fast pace of the warm weather months is quickly grinding to a halt, and so too are my opportunities to jump on my bike and ride. While I am mentally preparing myself to slow down in more ways than one, and find comfort in the predictable cycle leading us towards the longest night of the year, but also the returning of the light, I am also trying to embrace the season by preparing myself to stay open and welcome to all of its gifts. It is also the season of giving. Balancing all of these seemingly opposing positions can be a little exhausting. Over time, I have come to accept that the way to not find ourselves overburdened or burnt out this time of the year is to create space for all of these things to be true and to recognize that everything is cyclical and always moving and always changing. And perhaps most importantly, we're not experiencing these cycles and transitions alone. Last night we fell back. Everybody get that nice extra hour of sleep? So we have a little more daylight in the morning, but a little less in the evening. The leaves are just past peak color, the long branches of the trees reaching up to touch what's left of the warmth of the sun and are just about bare. The nighttime is quiet now. The crickets and katydids are mostly tucked in until next year. All of these changes, that though they are predictable, they seem to sneak up on us all at once every year. And this sudden shock of everything changing all at once can be unnerving. There's a pervasive theme of loss during this time of the year: loss of light, loss of sound, loss of warmth, loss of color, loss of life. It's overwhelming. Back to bicycling briefly. I recently stumbled upon a quote from Susan B. Anthony that had really helped to center myself and offered a metaphor, because I need to think in metaphors, to remind me of the value of staying open to receiving unexpected gifts. And the quote says, "She who succeeds in gaining the mastery of the bicycle will gain mastery of life." I was a little perplexed when I first saw this. It sounded nice, but what on earth does that mean? And shortly after, I saw another Susan B. Anthony quote, who is a wonderful bicycle advocate, that made connections and linkages between women, bicycles, and freedom, saying, quote, "I think the bicycle has done more to emancipate women than any one thing in the world. I rejoice every time I see a woman ride by on a bike. It gives her a feeling of self-reliance, independence, the moment she takes her seat, and away she goes, the picture of untrammeled womanhood." Both quotes were pearls of wisdom that I was searching for, especially the word untrammeled, definitely keeping that one on standby. And I certainly experienced this feeling of freedom and joy, and when I'm able to share it with other women. So after reading these, like a oncoming bicycle right behind me, ding, clarity. The bicycle is the perfect symbol of the cycles of the seasons in our lives. By recognizing that our lives and the natural cycles in which we are a part are always moving, and therefore we too are always moving, we can find relief that this constant motion means no one season or cycle is permanent, and it is not always moving at the same place or the same pace. And again, we're not on this path alone. We are all riding alongside each other together. And much like any bike ride, if any of you have had the pleasure, if you remember when you were a child, there are ups, the steep hills that take all of your strength and all of your breath to climb, and the downs, the near slalom-like descents that bring with them an invigorating blend of joy, freedom, and maybe a little fear, depending how fast you're going. And you need one in order to have the other. You can't have the downhill without the uphill. This is much like we need winter slumber in order to have spring's awakening, so we can enjoy summer's sunshine and the harvest and bounty of the fall. You must have one in order to have the others. So each of these cycles and seasons bring with them gifts, some planned, some unpredictable. And all of these gifts offer us opportunities to learn and grow, or to pause and rest, whatever we need at that moment. And we can receive them all if we create the space and intention to welcome these gifts into our lives. So we light the chalice today to honor the ever-moving cycles and seasons of life, the many gifts that they bring into our lives, and the hope that we all may live lives of untrammeled joy, peace, and love.
And now something we haven't done for a minute. I welcome you to greet your neighbor. Just say hello. Introduce yourself if you haven't met them before. I'll ring the bell in a minute or two.
There we go. There we go. Come on. Good, good, good. All right. Now, sit down over here if you can. Sit down real nice. Little kids in the front, okay? Little kids in the front. Yeah, you can go behind them. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. When I was younger, much younger than now, probably about your age, I lived with my grandparents for a little while. And my grandfather, he worked nights. So when do you think he went to sleep? If he worked at night, when did he go to sleep? Yeah, and what time of day was that? Morning. So he worked nights, he got up in the morning, and then he had, he went to sleep in the morning, and then later on, he was a little cranky, but, he would wake up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, on Fridays, something special happened where he worked, and he worked at the Colonial Baking Company, and this was a place that mainly made the bread. We're talking about Tennessee here. This was in Tennessee. And his job all day long, 6 days a week, was to put the little twist ties on the bread bags. All the time. Horrible, grueling job. Yeah, really hard job. And so his money was very, very precious to him. Okay? But every Friday was payday. And on payday, he would take me to get his check from work, because they didn't have those automatic deposit things going on back then. He'd take me to where he worked, Colonial Baking Company. He would get his check, and then we would go to a place and cash the check. And then he would give me $5. Does that sound like a lot? He would give me $5. And for that $5, I had all the candy and soda I needed for the rest of the week. And I especially loved candy necklaces. Especially, I'm looking back at Jean, because Jean has given me candy necklaces that were actually for you guys, and I ate them. But I thought they were for me. So, anyways, so he gave me $5, which really now, what can you buy with $5? What? Not much, not much. So, what about $20? What can you buy with $20? A toy, right? What? Okay, so I'm gonna give you each $20, okay? Here you go. They're like, what the heck? There you go. And there you go. And there you go. And there you go. Ooh, look, it leaves me with 20. Ooh. That's rough. Now, that's rough. But here's the catch. You've got $20, but we're talking about generosity today, remember? And remember how generous my grandfather was that he gave me $5 out of his paycheck that he worked so hard for. I'm giving you the $20, and what I want you to do is I want you to use that $20 to help someone else. So this is not to buy yourself something, okay? You need to help somebody out. Now, you could just hand the $20 to somebody and say, there, I helped somebody out. But, you know, see if you can be creative. Like, could you take your $20 and can you go buy something like maybe some sugar and some flour and some eggs and make some cookies? And then sell them in the bake sale, and then you can make more money to give away, right? So see what you can come up with. You've got 2 weeks. 2 weeks, I want you to report back to me, okay? 2 weeks on what you did with your money, which is not spend it on yourself, okay? All right. So. Okay, so here's another thing we're going to do. So usually you guys are in your, can you pass those out? Usually you guys are in your classroom when they read the covenant, but we want to start having you guys help us read the covenant. So here, you better give me one, because, yeah. Okay, so everybody join us. You know, it's in your order of service. Ready? Okay, read it out really loud, okay? Love
is the spirit of this church and serveth its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to class.
Church is supported by pledge money from friends and members like you. If you wish to give the money to the church, write on the check or money order that you give that it is for UUYO. And my phone died just a second. Because suspense. I will tell you in a moment whom we're giving away our plate to. Our Give Away the Plate recipient for November is the Senior Support Action Group. Yay. The Senior Support Action Group, SASAG, is a nonprofit organization, program of Family and Community Services, Inc., working to improve the health and well-being and independence of low-income, homebound seniors and other disabled persons by providing access to transportation and companionship throughout Mahoning, Trumbull, and Columbiana counties. We will now receive the offering that supports the life of Youngstown, the Mahoning Valley, and our wider world.
Please join me in a time of silent meditation for about a minute or so.
These words are from the prophet by Khalil Gibran. Then said a rich man, "Speak to us of giving." And he answered, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. For what are your possessions but things you keep and guard for yourself, for fear you may need them tomorrow? And tomorrow, what shall tomorrow bring? To the overprudent dog, burying bones in the trackless sand as he follows the pilgrims to the holy city. And what is fear of need by need itself? Is not dread of thirst when your well is full, the thirst that is unquenchable? Those who give little of the much they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the beauty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. And there are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, and give with the mindfulness of virtue, without mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes he speaks upon the earth. He smiles upon the earth. It is well to give when asked, but it is better to give unasked, through understanding. And to the open-handed, the search for one who shall receive is joy greater than giving. And is there aught you would withhold? You shall someday, all you have shall someday be given, and therefore give now, the season of so that the season of giving may be yours and not your inheritors. You often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchards say not so, and the flocks, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. And he who is worthy to receive his days and nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who drinks, who is deserved to drink from the cup of the ocean of life, deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what desert shall there be greater than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to give, lest for in truth it is life that gives unto life, while you who deem yourself a giver are but a witness. And you receivers, and you are all receivers, assume no weight of gratitude, lest you lay a yoke upon yourself and upon him who gives. Rather, rise together, and the giver on his gifts as on wings. For to be over-mindful of your debt is to doubt his generosity, who has the free-hearted earth for mother and God for father.
This has been one of the most generous congregations I've been a part of. And I've felt that since day one, actually before day one, before I even arrived here. When I was living in Tulsa and in search, I remember receiving a nice bouquet of flowers from the search committee. Nobody's ever given me flowers. Not before then, not since. But what I remember most were the letters describing who you were and what your experience of living in Youngstown has been. Even though I had never been to Youngstown before, the letters read to me as truthful, which really moved me. A recognition of some of the past stories and inherited reputations, paired with a tenderness and grounded hopefulness with what this place truly is and what it could become. What I remember feeling when I was in Tulsa was this was an incredibly generous congregation, and not just because of the flowers. There were people here who were willing to be seen for who they really were, willing to share what they desired openly, what they hoped for. There was something very natural in the connection I felt with this congregation. It caused me to settle in myself a little more and be a bit more generous with myself, and that's never left me. But that sense of generosity, I remember first arriving here and having a spaghetti dinner at the Burgers, drinking a Rolling Rock with Al Pierce. I remember first arriving here and doing Roger Jones' memorial service. I'll never forget this. Gloria, his wife, introduced me for the first time to see Roger, and without skipping a beat, in Gloria style, said, "Roger, this is the man who's going to do your memorial service." What an introduction. Intimacy, so fast, based purely on circumstances, lining up just a certain way. I long felt that the greatest generosity we can receive or that we can give another is the full grace and appreciation to be themselves, to really celebrate and honor that mystery, to really appreciate who is really there, the full beauty of that encounter. It's not always like that, as you probably know. I found in myself ways that I've constantly kept accounts in my head, and how I've lived many years with a distinct feeling that there is always a deficiency, a loss. The situation I'm in, the person I'm with, myself, somehow deficient, somehow missing something. And that's sometimes really good to feel. Wow, there is something critical missing. For me recently, it's been realizing that sometimes a sense of warmth can be missing. I've been learning how in situations that are overwhelming, that in that moment I can't seem to stop or do anything to change, at least not in that moment. Overwhelm takes over. I've learned in those moments I tend to want to withhold myself from it. Withhold from the situation, which is veering to me completely out of control. Especially if I'm bombarded with sensations that are heartbreaking and that seem completely unnecessary. A part of me kind of shuts down. And I really want to separate myself from it because it's just way too much to feel connected to. I know I'm not alone in this. And I've learned to respect that sense of overwhelm often comes from multiple sources at once. It's almost never just one source. It comes from the news, it comes from our families, it comes from our own sense of being in our own body, processing our own life dealing with friends, our neighbors. It happens all at once, all at the same time, without ceasing. Life is generous like that. The world is constantly coming to us, approaching us, even as we sit here. We have infinite guests here. I was reminded of a story my father shared with me about the hilarity of life's generosity. He had cousins who lived off the land in Arizona, very basic, to most people's standards, pretty primitive, but they were incredibly generous with what they had. They didn't have any running water. They had 2 outhouses, one for the family to use and one for guests. They kept the one for guests really nice and clean. But my dad, as a kid, was not struck by the cleanliness of the outhouse. He was overwhelmed by having to go outside in the dark, frightened of rattlesnakes, freezing, with no flashlight to get inside his wonderful guest outhouse. They grew a lot of their own food, and they didn't eat much meat, which my dad was not used to. He asked one time at the table, "Do we ever eat meat?" One of the cousins, without looking up from his plate, said, "We have an old donkey that needs to be put down. And tomorrow, if you want to help me, we can do that. We should have meat by tomorrow night." My dad loved that donkey. He changed tact immediately and said, No. He liked eating less meat. We can leave the donkey alone. For the cousins, they were living with generosity. But my dad couldn't get over what was not there. With some time, he became amused about how stuck he was in focusing on what wasn't there, not what he expected, instead of this strange generosity that was given. It makes me wonder if that's where scarcity comes from. That move that I think a lot of us make to either hyper-focus on what is not there, what could be better, what is at fault or missing in this situation, or the pole opposite, which is actually the same move in reverse. I have to hold on to this. Please don't take this from me. Please, I don't want to separate myself from this. And I wonder if together as a culture we're kind of bouncing back between these extremes of scarcity. Either feeling that what we have now in some way doesn't measure up to something we once had or something that we were promised, or just holding on for dear life to things just because we know it. The old human conundrum. I want the world to be different, but I want to stay the same. I think being generous with that, all of that, is a smart move. It's a funny move, but I found it's an effective one, at least for me. Being really generous with the ways I withhold or want to hold on, or the ways I just want to push and force my will. They're all just ways to control, which I am so intimately familiar with. Maybe some of you are too. I always thought it was kind of strange, and probably not by accident, that one of the dominant stories of our culture is about people who forsake worldly possessions and go town to town healing people, sharing meals, drinking wine. I think this congregation is like 2/3 of the way there, including myself. I don't think it's an accident. Good stories offer a counterbalance. And even if we don't follow that story ourselves, it's somehow good to know other possibilities exist. I was reminded about the story of a person who hears Jesus preaching and is so moved that he wants to live just how he is living. He wants to spend time with him. It just so happens this person who is totally moved is rich. And Jesus says, just leave your possessions behind and follow me. And in the story, and I love this, I've never forgotten this, the rich man doesn't respond verbally. He just walks away. Jesus seems to put up a barrier which the rich person can't seem to cross. And that's what I actually thought the story was about. But it's taken a few pledge drive seasons. I see this story very differently now. Every good story is really about us. It's not about other people, right? Yeah, that rich guy. No, it's about us. So in the story of the rich man, my heart is moved. I feel very moved by this rich man. I glimpse, for him, there's some dim possibility that he caught on to that is incredibly rich. And you know what that rich life is? A life of service to others in love. Sound familiar? I'm the rich man. And this really resonates, this path. I never knew a life like that could be possible. It's a life meant just for me, which I don't really understand, but it feels true. I feel like a child again, just hearing of this possibility. A life of service to others in love. For a moment, it's like life becomes real, finally. I notice the colors. Technicolor. Not merely transactional. And I meet this guy, and it's almost like it's pledge drive season in Galilee. Jesus throws him a curveball and says, follow me. Just don't hold on to your riches so tightly. Loosen the grip a little bit. I know money is an important part of your identity. Not having enough money, being poor, being rich, whatever the identity is, it's all the same. It's just an idea. It's not necessary. I feel very generous toward the rich man in this predicament. In my mind now, Jesus was incredibly generous in giving what seems to be a barrier, but is actually a gateway. What is it to be rich? What is it to be poor? Does our bank account reflect that? Do our accomplishments or lack of accomplishments reflect that? Jesus just gave the rich man the keys to the kingdom and put it in his pocket. Exactly what he asked for. These questions are the keys. They seem like a barrier, but they're not. They're gateways. I like to imagine that rich man walking home all depressed, wondering about how he could give up so much. I imagine him exhausting himself, scheming how he can find some way to get around this. Maybe he'll bribe Jesus. He likes wine. I imagine him getting so exhausted he falls into a deep sleep. And in the dream world, maybe it all falls into place. And he wakes up laughing. And he realizes the gift he's been given right in his pocket. He already has the greatest treasure imaginable. He already has the keys to the kingdom. Jesus actually gave him a shortcut. He doesn't need to follow him in the wilderness. He already has the keys. The barrier is the key. the gateway to what he was really looking for all along. In truth, this is what has been inspiring to me lately about life's generosity. The part of us that seems to be the thing in the way actually is the way. The rich man wondering how he can be rich and serve others in love. That question is not a barrier. It's the way. It's incredibly generous, which is why I'm really glad this place exists. Some people wonder how we can all have such different views here, so many different experiences, and still actually be a community together that on most days really likes each other, if not even loves each other. For me, I see no problem. The way is incredibly generous. There isn't one way to live, one right way to do things. Life is much more generous than that. I've been having more fun playing with the aspects of my life that I think are barriers and discovering they're actually gateways. It's just my own limited understanding that thought they were barriers. It was fascinating when the worship associates first talked about generosity. Numerous people shared some version of that they felt they were not very generous in general, which I think is kind of great. It's less interesting to me to actually approach this theme of generosity from, well, I love this theme because I'm incredibly generous. It's kind of nice to experience it much like the rich man in the story. I don't think I'm worthy to fully participate in this. There's a barrier here to entry. To get on this ride, you need this much generosity. And you're down here, buddy. I don't think in the big scheme of things, life cares whether we think we're generous or not. It's generous anyway. My hope is, as we start this month, I welcome all of us, including myself, to revel a little bit in the parts that don't feel all that generous. The parts that feel withholding, judgmental, worried. I think that's where the keys are found, truth be told. It's found in the parts of ourselves that we doubt, that we're unsure of. That's where generosity gets in. There's a great Zen story. I'll close with this. It's a great Zen story about a student who's trying to understand the nature of reality, trying to understand the Dharma, trying to understand how this all works. And the teacher can see the student is reaching for some answer that is constantly eluding them. And the teacher says to this wonderful student, "Don't give me the answer you're reaching for. Just give me the reaching." Can you give me your compulsion to reach? I find that's a generous move. I can't give you what I'm reaching for, but I can give you the reaching. In short, I can give myself to you, all my craziness. I can give you the reaching. I can give you my withholding. You want some withholding? I have tons of it. My need to control? I have so much. I'm such a rich man. The rich man thought he was reaching out to be a disciple, but he didn't need to do that. The treasure was in the reaching. The reaching for riches, the reaching for reputation, the reaching for a new spiritual way of life. It was the reaching. That was the thing. Not the thing he was searching for. So I don't know about you. I'm happy to give you my reaching. Some of you may be happy to give me yours. You can even do that if you want. The generosity is already there if we're open to it. If we're open to all the ways we don't think we're generous. Please pray with me. Spirit of love. Man, what a generous service this has felt to me. Thank you, everyone involved, everyone who was here this morning, online and in person. Thank you to our wonderful musicians and worship associates and chalice lighters and people on the pledge drive team and people who are here for the first time. Wow, what a amazing, generous morning this is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're just so grateful. All this we pray in gratitude. Amen. Please rise and body your spirit for our closing hymn, For All That Is Our Life. 128.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for faithful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts until we meet again.
I'm very generous with my hand movements. I get very excited up here. As you depart, please remember the one great fact. Each and every one of you, and this goes for everyone online and everyone who will watch this in time and space, maybe in a capsule in outer space in 500 years, you are loved and never truly alone.